Turtles. I really liked the original series, even though I was too young to remember most of it. Loved the 2003 series, and played a good chunk of the video games. Konami's Ninja Turtles games were, with one or two exceptions, all pretty good. The beat-em-ups on the NES and Super Nintendo are classics that hold up to this day, and the 3 licensed games on the GameCube are pretty well made and fun to play. Hell, Battle Nexus and Mutant Nightmare are the only GameCube games I own that are 2 discs long. That's not the effort you find in licensed games. Konami always treated the series with love and respect. Ubisoft did not. Ubisoft's Ninja Turtles games were a decent Prince of Persia clone and a shitty, blatant cash grab Super Smash Bros. Clone. At some point, the series passed hands to Activision, and the games got even worse. Activision released Out of the Shadows and Nickelodeon's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Out of the Shadows was apparently bad enough to crack Angry Joe's Worst Games of the Year list, and the Nickelodeon game is a library rental. Yeah, I'm journeying into the darkness here, and beyond the darkness lies shittiness. The very little variation to the enemies. Foot Ninja, Krang, more Foot Ninja, more Krang. You fight the same enemies in the first level as you do in whatever level I quit playing on. The controls, press A to attack, press B to jump, which you'll never do because jump attacks suck, and press Z to use a charged up special attack, which you'll only do when you need to smash a shield. So basically you have just one attack button, and gameplay boils down to mashing that one button until enemies stop moving. If you've inflicted enough damage to an enemy, a prompt will appear to press the C button and throw them and instantly kill them. But what confused me is that you can play the game with the classic controller, and the game does not register which controller you're using. So when you can throw an enemy, a prompt will appear to press the X button when the Wii Remote has no X button. That's honestly all there is to the game. You run through a level until a group of enemies stops you, you mash the A button until all the enemies are dead, and you move on. If I think to myself, gosh, I'm bored when I'm playing a game, that's bad. If I think that to myself 10 minutes in, that's really bad. I think your attacks will keep bouncing off enemies because if an enemy is attacking, you can't damage them, and the hit detection when you're fighting mousers is horrible. And difficulty curve, the game doesn't send more difficult enemies after you in later levels, it just stops giving you health power-ups. The game's core is awful because the basic gameplay is so monotonous and dull, and built around this core is even more awful. The game is also only 3 to 4 hours long, but the game has time trial and survival modes, so that you can strangle a little more length out of this boring-ass game.
Let's take 5 for some pizza.
You know, that sounds like a good idea. Hello, yes? I would like to order a large pizza with peanut butter and pickles. Huh. Okay. How about guacamole and onions? Darn. Well, now, if you don't have guacamole, I don't want the onions. Ooh! Well, it really sounds good. I'll have a large pizza with pretzels and tuna fish. Give me one good reason why you don't have tuna fish. You're disgusting! I'm sorry they stand around doing nothing. Every single fight, your AI partners will do absolutely jack squat to help you. The one turtle that does fight an enemy will launch attacks so slowly that you'll probably finish the entire rest of the group by the time he kills that one enemy. But hell, at least he's trying. At least Raphael is pretending to help out, whereas Don and Mike, you're standing around staring off into space. And the killer part is, I'm pretty sure the partner AI is programmed to stand around doing nothing on purpose. The game is so damn easy that if the AI was even slightly competent, you'd be able to sit back and watch the AI play for you. The game is even aware that the AI is useless because enemies will completely ignore your partners in order to dogpile you. One enemy will go fight one turtle to disguise it, but the enemies will focus on you and only you so your allies can get away with doing nothing. They knew their game was crap, and instead of making it better, they decided to make it more crap. Enemies will stopping you. There's nothing in the game forcing you to switch characters. It's entirely your prerogative. All 4 turtles control exactly the same, so it's not like you'll switch to fit a situation. Unless you plan on playing co-op, you only need 1 or 2 turtles leveled up, and you can ignore the others. You get 3 lives per level, and you'll never use all of them unless you suddenly fall into a coma. The only time I ran out of lives was during the Baxter Stockman boss fight, because the AI turtles are so damn dumb that they will stand around in the middle of nowhere taking damage and not even trying to dodge attacks. The AI turtles take much less damage than you, sure, but if they just stand around soaking up damage, they're going to die at some point, and when they die, it's taken out of your lives. Oh, right, the bosses. Bosses are completely immune to damage except for one short window of time, and you're not told when this window of time is. You just have to keep attacking until you magically start doing damage. The time that you're allowed to attack a boss is very short, and you have to wait a long time for a boss to be open. It's fairly easy to figure out the boss's pattern, but bosses take a lot of damage and are immune to damage. On the menu, continue, new game, and legals. If you select legals, it takes you to this massive 23-section long document that reads like something you'd find in an online privacy agreement. Again, this is a Wii game with no online content. Seeing as how I don't have a life, I actually sat down and read this whole damn thing. I won't go into everything that's in this document, I might do a separate video for that, but here's the bullet points. You cannot sell, lend out, or otherwise give away this game after you've bought it. If you upload a video anywhere on the internet that has content from an Activision game, Activision can seize it, edit it, delete it, take all the profits from it, and if you have signed this agreement, you have waived your ability to so much as assert your rights over your own content. In addition to monitoring your online interactions, they can monitor your console itself. There's one section that basically outright states that Activision is working on console-wide DRM similar to what Microsoft attempted with the Xbox One. Activision can shut down your gaming account with them and irrevocably take away all of your achievements and DLC just because they feel like it, and failure to sign this codes, which is weird terminology. Nickelodeon's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was also released on the Xbox 360 and the 3DS, two consoles that support DLC while the Wii does not. So how do you do DLC on a console that doesn't do DLC? Easy. You put the stuff that was intended for DLC on the Wii disc, and then you lock it off so that it can't be accessed without using exclusive codes that you have to purchase online. Again, I have no way of proving this, and I really hope that I'm wrong, but I think that there are parts of the game that are locked off and impossible to access unless you purchase codes from Activision to unlock that content. They charged you $50, or now it's going for $30, for a game that is 3 hours long, and then they charge you more money for little sequences of letters to access the rest of the content that is already on the disc that you bought! There's a special place in hell for games like Nickelodeon's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, games that seem to actively hate their players. The game's design suggests that the developers knew the game was bad, and instead of fixing it, they made it worse. The game is criminally short and may have had content cut out to be sold separately. A long time ago, I reviewed one of the legendary bombs of video game history, Superman 64, and unlike most of the ninnies who claim to review the game but actually give up halfway through the first level, I actually rode the bull all the way to the end. To make a long story short, Superman 64 is even worse than the legends say, and is truly worthy of the title of being one of, if not the worst games of all time. But apparently the story doesn't end there. See, Superman 64 was made by a company called Titus Software, and you're not going to believe this. In fact, I still don't believe it. I'm pretty sure this is some elaborate prank being pulled on me by my viewers, but they made another one! Yeah, 2 years before Superman 64 was cursed upon the planet, Titus made another Superman game on the Game Boy. So this I've got to see, but you never know. Never judge a book by its cover. Or a prequel comic to explain it. The enemies, who look suspiciously like the Dark Shadows from the Nintendo 64 game, it's almost like they recycled the enemies they already had, all have guns and open fire as soon as you're in their line of sight, and bullets move way too fast for you to dodge. Luckily, being Superman, you can punch the bullets and deflect them back into the enemies, because apparently now Superman is willing to kill people with his gun fists. But since the enemies shoot you the instant they see you and the bullets move so fast, you'll never be able to react and punch the bullets by instinct, so you start tediously nudging your way through the level so you can mash the punch button as soon as an enemy gets into view. You can, of course, cut out the middleman and kill enemies by punching them, but you take damage by touching enemies whether they attack you or not, and the game's hit detection is very biased against you, so you need to punch enemies without actually touching them somehow. Let me explain it this way. The game treats Superman as a block that encases you and a few square pixels outside of you, so enemies can damage you by touching the blank space immediately around you, and you have no ranged attacks. The only way to punch an enemy is to get close enough. Flying is a bad idea in level 1 is that enemies like to sit in windows and have the same accuracy as their land-based buddies, and if you try and fly up to the windows and attack them, A, good luck flying to them with any accuracy, and B, you will either get shot or take damage from touching the bad guy before you kill them. So do what I do and just ignore them. It makes this level like 2 minutes long. Oh, so that's what the keys are for, to make a launch pad appear at the end of the street, because Superman can't take off flying from any other point on this street. Now you're probably wondering how you use Superman's other powers like heat vision or super breath. It's quite simple. You don't. As you watch over the city, the invaders begin their attack. You have 2 keys to find. Yes, invaders are apparently attacking the city from the sky, and yet Superman is more concerned with finding keys instead of stopping the invasion. Level 2 doesn't have any ground. You have to stay flying throughout the entire level. If you dip below the bottom of the screen, you die, with the game saying you have quit the fight as an excuse. I didn't quit, I just flew a little low because the controls suck ass! Luckily, the 2 keys you need are in plain sight at the end of the level, so you don't need to kill any of the because this could give a guy a seizure. There's not much to say about the sound, though. There are barely any sound effects in the game, and the music is pretty bland. I usually play my Game Boy with the sound muted anyway. The screen is small because this could give a guy a seizure. There's not much to say about the sound, though. There are barely any sound effects in the game, and the music is pretty bland. I usually play my Game Boy with the sound muted anyway, and this game you're not missing much by doing that. What's weird is that there is a song in the game that sounds like a variation of the Superman theme, but it only plays when you die! Level 3, you're in LexCorp, and you have to find 2 keys and then fight the Lexoskel 5000. The level is full of these electrical barriers and more flashers that shoot you the instant you come into sight. I guess now is as good a time as any to mention that if you die, you get sent back to the start of the level, and you don't get to keep any keys you've collected. Because this is the first level where it becomes a massive pain in the ass, since there are flashers behind every corner. You get 6 continues, lose all of them, and you get a game over, and then you either shut the game off or you're taking damage, and you figure out when it's best to just ignore enemies and pass them by. It's all a matter of patience. The game has cheap tricks that kill you in lieu of actual challenge or difficulty. Case in point, the Lexoskel, the boss of Stage 3, is easy as crap to beat, mostly because this is the only time when the hit detection isn't biased against you. Level 4 takes place underwater because apparently Superman finds a secret passage at LexCorp that leads underwater. The graphics now do this tripping balls ripple effect. Did he eat the guy who was carrying the key? Or has Lex Luthor been training sharks to carry keys for him? And if so, why in God's name would he do that? The game's controls have also somehow gotten worse since it takes much longer for you to accelerate upwards when you hold A than normal. I never thought I'd say this, but I wish I was playing as Aquaman. At least I'd be able to use telepathy to tell these sharks to piss off! Level 5 is a recycled copy of Level 2, so now I can completely ignore all of these enemies again. But like Level 2, this stage is so broken you're probably going to lose another life here. Level 6 takes place aboard the Preserver's ship, even though the game doesn't name him. This hit you first. It's total bullshit! Level 7 is a recycled clone of Level 1, only with enemies that look like Lobo on flying bikes that take 4 goddamn hits to kill a piece. The only way to kill these assholes is to fly up close to them and bullet punch them, which is hard to do since the controls are so lousy. On top of that, again, you need to kill all of the enemies because they're holding most of the keys. Shit! And Level 8 is a recycled clone of Level 3, the LexCorp level. The layout is different and the electrical gates are faster, but it's the same damn stage. And Level 9 is a recycled Level 4, the underwater level. Are you freaking kidding me? Half the levels are just reused and slightly rearranged versions of other levels? How lazy can you get? And I gave up on this game having an actual story a long time ago, but why do you go from fighting invaders to breaking into LexCorp to swimming underwater for no real reason, then fighting the Preserver, then fighting more invaders, then breaking into LexCorp and going underwater again? It's like these levels were arranged at random. Horrors are waiting around the next corner. This game is just crap. It's made a failure and not even interesting failure. Superman 64 was a train wreck. It was horrible, but it was fascinating. This is just a car breaking down. It's not interesting, it's just dull. If you don't mind me going on a little tangent, there's one last final thing I'd like to address about Superman 64. The head of Titus has said repeatedly that Superman 64 was not their fault. He said that Superman 64 was horrible because the Nintendo 64 wasn't capable of what they wanted to do, and because Warner Brothers and DC kept meddling with the game until it got screwed into oblivion. I will always call bullshit on that excuse. The Nintendo 64 wasn't as powerful as they thought. That explains the draw distance. Warner Brothers kept meddling. That explains the glitches because they probably had to rush the game, and that explains the dumb story because they didn't want Superman punching real people. Neither of those things explain the rings. They don't explain why none of the levels make any sense. They don't explain why the controls are broken. They don't explain... I didn't plan on doing this. When I started doing a couple of reviews based on Yu-Gi-Oh games, I had planned to finish with Wheelie Breakers, end the Yu-Gi-Oh reviews on a positive note, and move on to other games. I bought this game months ago, not even wanting to review it. It was just a game I had always been curious about, and I finally decided to check it out. For so many years, I had been wondering about this Yu-Gi-Oh game that I wanted to play but didn't have, and now that I've played it, It's just disappointing. It's like waiting for years to see a decent Superman movie and then getting a piece of... oh... And now I'm cursed to review every lousy game that I play because people give a crap about what I think, so let's do this. Several years ago, there was a spin-off of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game that was a board game played with dice instead of cards. It was called Dungeon Dice Monsters, and even though it was never nearly as popular as its card-playing counterpart, DDM was, I think, from my limited exposure to it, a fairly well-designed game. There's also a 4-part episode of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series dedicated to showing off the game, and fun fact, as a third or so consolation prize from a contest on